dropping the banner. Our brand.
Feel free to control the stuff.
Yeah.
Join us and our friends as we fall down the rabbit hole of security wonder. If you're ready to see how deep it goes, you've found the right place. Pour your tea. You're not late for office hours. And now, our Red Queen, Tara Wheeler.
Hello, how is everyone doing this week? I'm Tara Wheeler, CEO of Red Queen Dynamics. I'm so thrilled, as always, to be joined by my friend and dear colleague, James Byerly, not just an incredible and amazing partner to us, but also CEO of Secure Point Solutions. And we get to have a super fun conversation today about cyber insurance. He's excited.
Yes.
I know, right? So we're going to get a chance to talk a little bit more about the nature of cyber insurance. It's such a huge topic. I feel like it comes up again and again, and this is like the cyber insurance for small biz and MSPs podcast, I swear to God, at this point. So, we have this conversation again and again, and yet people keep fucking it up. They just do. James, you want to talk at least a little bit this week about one of the issues that you've seen come up this week? Super fascinating one.
Yeah, so it kind of created a question where we have a client who we're going to offboard to another provider, and it just made me kind of wonder. They went through a lot of time and effort with their questionnaire for their insurance company of all the things that they had, whether it was us providing it or controls they had put in place. But now what happens when that new provider comes in, especially if they're not now giving out the same security solutions, which I kind of equate to you. If you buy a new car, you have to let your insurance company know, I mean, as soon as possible, because I mean, you could leave the car lot and get into an accident, and then there's going to be suddenly some things to explain. So I kind of wonder, how does that work within the insurance industry from a cyber risk standpoint? Do they need to go back through their questionnaire? Do they need to, or do they need to talk to their new provider and say, hey, we need exactly the same feature set, which we both know that there's so many products out there that may say, well, we're an EDR. It's like, are you though? So it's an interesting question, and something that we're going to make sure that we advise our customers when we work with them, going forward. We hope to not have to onboard or offboard too many, but we know that it does happen for a variety of reasons.
Well, there's good and there's bad from kind of the Red Queen perspective on this one. The good part is you don't have to redo your whole cyber insurance checklist. The bad part is that the parts that tend to be complex that you're having your MSP do, those parts, the answers are no longer valid for, right? And as it comes back up again, you've got somebody inside a small business who's saying, we absolutely have next gen AI enabled XDR on all endpoints. They're freaking 15-person accounting firm in Dubuque. Don't give me that, right? So like that's the challenge really, is making sure that organizations understand the consequences of their actions. And I think we've seen a little bit, of kind of some small businesses. And I know I've seen this as a security consultant for the last 2 decades. There's a little shop and hop that happens, I think. You get a lot of energy and effort from an MSP to get you set up so that you're in the flow and you're good to go. But there's a lot of small businesses that don't understand the continuous monitoring aspect. That what you're doing is you're getting set up to be perpetually improving over time. And it's almost like every 3 years going through like a health kick, and then you're bewildered as to why, you gain weight and your heart rate and your blood pressure increase over the next 3 years because you don't do any of that training anymore. They're like, oh, I got to get back in shape again. You do 3 months of, back-breaking boot camp, and then you drop it all again and sit on the couch for 3 years. Like, it doesn't make any sense, and the swings are by themselves not good for you, as well as there's just like, with a little bit of extra energy, you could, on a day-to-day basis, beyond couch potato, you could maintain that health. And it's like I'm watching these shop and hoppers kind of, it's like that treatment of health, I think. Oh, is that a good analogy? What do you think?
I think it is. I mean, I think in some ways, people know, I think to even get it a little more right to the point, I think of MSP sometimes being used as like a personal trainer, but then rather it be that, hey, check in with me once a week and we'll work on the personal training side. It's, hey, I need to look great for this wedding, or I need to look great for this reunion in 3 weeks. And then after that, I'm going to go back to the pizza rolls and the couch. And it's, having worked in an MSP, having helped take a customer, that was maybe in bad shape and get them to where they need to be. It can't always be fixed overnight, and it can't, and it has to be maintained. You can't just say, "Hey, thanks for the last few months. We're out of here." It's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and especially when you're expected to kind of keep those skills up over time and keep that stance up to be eligible for the things you signed up for. Like you got cyber insurance right here. Like I love it, Sheila. It's exactly it, right? The question about cyber insurance presumes that you're maintaining at a certain level. And I feel like it's like using as your profile pic on a dating app, like you at the most fit you've ever been in your entire existence at the top of Mount Rainier, carrying a dog you just rescued, while serving a gourmet lasagna, to a crowd of like recently vaccinated orphans, right? Like that's as good as you're ever going to look. But that's not your day-to-day reality, right? You show up a little bit later on and you're like, wow, okay, well, this doesn't look like you at all. There's some responsibility to present yourself as you are and as you're intending on maintaining yourself for the people that you're going to be in those lifelong contracts with, right? I don't know if that's a good
Absolutely.
analogy either.
No. I mean,
Yeah.
I trust me, having done done a little bit of the online dating back in the day, there
Absolutely.
definitely is that, like, I'm gonna need to see what we're working with here a little bit,
Mhm.
But and I think another thing would be, you buy a car, you get the insurance that's, you're legally required to have, and there's
Yeah.
there's obviously commitments in that. But then you decide that, well, I'm going to start drag racing
Mhm.
semi-professionally in my Camry.
Yeah.
That's probably not in your insurance. That,
Right.
and then even worse so is you realize, oh, I could save so much weight by removing some of these things and I could be faster, and you start
Hmm.
removing safety features or things like that. And again, it's just that,
Yeah.
you're breaking a contract, and and if something happens right then and there, and the insurance looks into it and goes, well, why do you not have brakes? Well, the brake calipers were heavy, I took them off, something stupid like that.
Yeah. I think if I'm thinking about it, my motorcycle insurance doesn't cover track days, probably, right? Like this is motorcycle racing. So I think that there's elements where you can't promise. It would be like me promising to become a motorcycle racing instructor, but not being able to cover the extra elements of what that would mean in the insurance policy that I've got, right? And for a lot of us, that's a lot of what it is the business insurance that includes a cyber insurance rider. Depends on if there's, E&O. There's a lot of really interesting conversations about errors and omissions there. But certainly cyber insurance is really focused in on wire fraud, data breaches, ransomware, and incident response time and coverage, as well as sometimes being very prescriptive about the firms that you can use that are on the insurance provider's list of approved vendors for incident response, which is a thing to look into before you have an incident. Um, but I've really seen a lot of small businesses, and let's be honest, not a few MSPs, that they've got a process and they're going to check green on everything, and until someone tells them otherwise, like they're gonna use that as the paperwork. It's not going to fly anymore, I think, really. And to change MSPs when you don't know and don't do any of your own technology in-house, I feel like you need to notify your insurance company like you are changing your car. I really do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, and even, from the standpoint of provider, I think if I took a client on and they've said, well, we had this provider, we have this cyber risk insurance, I would want to, for some, just so I could sleep better at night, make sure that we're aligning our services with what their insurance is expecting.
Mhm.
I mean, ultimately it falls to that business owner to be responsible, but, I think it also falls to us as the security practitioners to help people understand that, hey, that is probably something you should ask them about. Because I know in some of our clients, we are named as a company
Mhm.
in the insurance document, so that thing at least has to change.
Well, I think there's an element of that, and I also think that, we could spend all day long talking about cyber insurance, and, Sheila's like those dirty words, right? They're also scary, I think, for people. And if I wanted to try to do a Halloween tie-in on this one, I know one of the things that I dealt with today is I was on a call with a SOC manager, an incident response manager, who was burnt out, super burnt out. You can see it in their face. For those of you who've ever been a SOC manager, who've ever spent that time on incident response, um, I think one of the scariest things I see in our field is burnout that's so bad, you're actually beyond the point of burnout anymore. You cease caring that you're burnt out. Like that's a level of burnt out that some of us get to. We got to swap that out. I think I think that's the scariest thing I've seen, really in my field is the number of people who get to that point of burnout who don't, they almost can't even they can't even care that they're burnt out anymore. And there are so few hands in cybersecurity to do the job that a burnt out SOC manager is better than no SOC manager. And I don't know, that's
Yeah.
scary to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I've seen it, whether it was from a security or, a manager, an MSP who's helping with all the help tickets. I mean, burnout is real, and sometimes it's hard for people to understand in technology because, or people that aren't in technology because they look at it and say, well, how are you burned out? You're just at your chair drinking coffee and you're typing stuff into a computer. But it's the fact that you could spend an entire shift working through 20 tickets and then realize that during that 20 tickets you worked, another 50 came in. It sometimes it feels like you're trying to bail water against the ocean, or doing something over and over, sometimes having to have the same conversations with clients. Those kind of things really start to add up. One thing that we're trying to do here to help maybe mitigate some of that burnout is we're trying to take a person off the floor, so to speak, and put them into doing some other things for a week. Whether it's, hey, go tinker in our lab, go take a class, an online class, and essentially just get them away from tickets where possible. And then that way it's kind of something that can be a little more cup filling, and it still is helpful to the company. It's just not it's, they still have time off normally, but this is come in and do something a little more enjoyable than just clear 39 tickets.
I think it's right to think that way, and I also think that not rotating duties amongst people, like a lot of places, incident response is not a clearly defined metric. It's not a clearly defined space in information security because I think a lot of teams don't think about incident response as a thing that you should plan for. They think about it as an interrupt, right? It's like we all have our jobs, but then if an incident comes along, we're all part of the team and we're all gonna pitch in and we're gonna solve the problem together. No, no, you're not. Because when that happens, everyone's going to default to their assigned roles, right? The SOC manager is going to end up as the de facto incident commander for every single ticket, every single incident. If you go the other direction, where the person who reports the incident becomes the incident commander, you get a massive drop in reporting because everybody's tired, and the job of incident commander or incident response is not being rewarded. It's not part of the KPIs for an individual inside a lot of organizations. So if you don't have a function, and one of the problems there is, how do you explain to, say, your reporting structure, right? The financial person inside the company, who is used to dealing with a chunk of accountants or revenue provision for the business. And imagine like all of the accounting side of a business going to their boss and saying, okay, we need you to dedicate resources and create a team of people so that when we screw up our jobs and we don't do the right thing with the money stuff you gave us, somebody can fix it. That's what they hear, right? That's what they hear is, the infosec people didn't infosec hard enough, and so now they want a cleanup function, right? And that's really difficult to, I think, to advocate for. And I think we see it inside of a lot of businesses, honestly, is the idea of incident response as a defined job function is because a lot of the reporting structures think of incident response as something that only happens if you screw up your regular job, which is horrifying, right? That's not what's happening. I don't know. Have you ever seen that dynamic happen before?
Yeah. I think we try to explain, day to day where a lot of times I think a security company is a lot like a fire department. We do the proactive things, just like a fire chief would go and make sure that smoke detectors and things like that are in place at a business. But then we also show up when things have gone badly, and it's when it becomes more the reactive. So I've seen
Mhm.
that, I've talked to customers who they've had incidents, and they've said, well, why did this happen? Well, we can plan for everything, but still things can happen. It's not 100% risk elimination. Just like everything that's in your car does not guarantee you avoid accidents. So
Right.
um, I think it's that, it's that
Mhm.
proactive reactive part. And I think in a lot of other business units, like you said, there's not a emergency bookkeeper. There's not
Yeah. Emergency
there,
bookkeeper. It's so
yeah,
great.
there's not
Yeah.
there's not the our SEO took a hit. We need to call in the SEO flying squad, and two people come in and start
Mhm.
mashing on Google or something. Those areas don't have it. There's
Yeah.
your closest thing is like maybe your HR or your public relations. There's sort of that crisis
Mhm.
management of, okay, our CEO just was drunk and blasted stuff on Twitter, and now we need to clean up. Okay, that's something that you probably have planned for, but that's
James,
really
I was not drunk last Friday on Twitter. That's actually how I feel about public policy.
that's fair. That's fair. And I
Yeah.
did quietly agree. But that's, but those are the things. Most business units don't have that crisis part that comes into play. And if they do, a lot of times they're hamstrung by a supply. If a business is relying on a supply chain, if the supplies don't come in, they don't come in. Maybe you try to call a new supplier. Maybe you don't put as much stuff out on the shelves, but those are things that are completely out of your control. Cybersecurity, that's something that you can help to control internally, whether you're working with a company or you're doing all your security on your own.
I think you also had what you brought up a news story, I think, this last week. And I think if you want to throw that on up there right now, we had a chance to talk at least a little bit about it. But one of the things we get to do is talk about more and more just the impact of the outside world on MSPs, MSSPs, small businesses, VCSOs. And what's more is these kinds of news stories are also often the ones that are getting paid attention to inside larger suppliers, which adds to compliance burden for smaller businesses. As soon as something like a CrowdStrike happens and the board at larger organizations are paying attention to it, that will rotate down into an organization, and they'll start asking questions about, like, how are you doing provisioning for supply chain? And honestly, there's a lot of small businesses driving trucks that have no answers for that, right? They're either, not perceptive of the place that they're playing, or that they themselves are part of the solution mix because they're part of a heterogeneous solution for supply chain management at some location. And yeah, I saw this. Do you know that Avaya used to own a company that I used to work for a long time ago? I didn't work for them. I did like a short detail at this little telecoms company out in Bellevue in like 2011, maybe 20. I forgot. And yeah, I stared at it. I was like, oof, that is a rough day for a lot of those folks. Four companies. You want to explain what happened, James?
Well, yeah. So most of us would be familiar with the SolarWinds attack, very late 2019, early 2020, and there were a few companies, and the SEC has come after a few of them, just that they minimize that impact. Maybe they weren't as upfront with their downline clients, and I know, having at the time working with a state agency, there was a lot of concern within our own, SolarWinds situation. But then every company that we were working with, every vendor, suddenly it becomes a question of, are you using SolarWinds? How are you doing anything about this? And to downplay it to maybe avoid, loss of reputation or whatever. It's these fines are justified, and they're probably not as harsh as they should be, but I'm glad somebody is holding their feet to the fire when it comes to this stuff.
Mhm. I'm glad for it too. At the level that it's starting to happen, right? We're used to the SEC kind of really going after the big dogs for political points. I think honestly is what it feels like to me at the other end of the market. Amazon, Microsoft, the FANGs, that kind of stuff, and it's happening because these organizations make headlines, and I feel like it's important for people to not feel like they can skate under the radar when they commit the same sins with the same impact, and there's a bunch of people that are impacted by these kinds of events and by the representation of companies that they know what they're doing when they don't know what they're doing, or they have done something that they haven't done, or the opposite. And I feel like it's important that this is starting to happen because, like, let's be real, like the companies that are charged here, Unisys Corp, Avaya Holdings, Checkpoint Software, and Mimecast, like these are not kitchen table brands, right? We're not sitting around in the morning talking about, grandma on Facebook. This is not the same thing. But
Right.
it's important because what it means is that organizations, once they realize that what they're saying matters, are going to start having to represent the actual honest to God truth. And that's again what I think you and I really talk about a lot. These folks didn't tell the truth. And they
Yeah.
need to, or at least the SEC thinks they didn't. Like,
Yeah.
dear lawyers, I'm sorry, I said that the wrong way, but you know what I mean.
Right. Well, and I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, they're not household names, and
Mhm.
right now off the top of my head, I can't remember what Unisys does, but
Mhm.
Avaya, phone
Yeah.
systems, checkpoint,
Welcome.
firewalls, EDR, the whole thing. And then Mimecast is often associated with email filtering.
Yeah.
If any one of those were then compromised by those continued down level effects of the SolarWinds attack, you would have now not only companies chasing down their own SolarWinds issues, but now their phones don't work. Their firewalls are maybe, compromised. It's something that is very, very concerning in amongst the entire, the entire chain of technology, really.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
so can you tell me what Unisys does? Because I can't remember.
I forgot. I just be Googling anyway. Hey, somebody tell me in the comments or something, or maybe I'll go take a look at it right now. But like I feel like you're right about it that, any of those companies goes down. So, and I just brought my show and tell for the week before Halloween. So like scary, like fun scary. And there's scary like fun scary, and that's Vincent Price. And then there's scary like misrepresenting your incident response readiness and your procedures and policies to the SEC. And that's not nearly as fun scary as Vincent Price. And by the way, this isn't just Vincent Price, it's an eyeshadow palette. So for all my femmes out there, just in case, I honestly I don't care if you want to wear this as well too, James. Like you just need to
I-
get a different brush, right? Um,
yeah.
Terror, we got Terror, Thriller, Ghoul, The Raven. We got over here, we got Red Death, right? Mask, King of Horror, and Spooks. These are great colors and they make me so happy. Anyway, this is just my
I
little
love
show
it.
and tell for the week. I'm so happy, right? And now I've got like purple. I look like a 12-year-old that just drew their eyeshadow on for the first time. I don't even care right now. I've got like
There you
purple
go.
and yellow eyeshadow on, and I'm like, I'm so happy. It's Halloween.
I know, and it'll fall on a Thursday. Like, who knows what might happen next week?
Crazy. Who knows what's gonna happen next week? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what's gonna go on. We'll see what's gonna go on.
Exactly.
Yeah, like we might just like do like a watch along or something like that of some fun Halloween stuff, or just ask people to tell us their scariest infosec stories. That's kind of a great
Ooh, I
idea,
like that.
right?
I like
Oh my
that.
God, yeah. Like come aboard and tell your scariest infosec story. And that's our Halloween
Exactly.
celebration. I love it.
Exactly. Exactly. Um,
Oh man. So if
I
you wanna
there was another
go ahead.
article that I actually once you said Microsoft, I remembered, and
Hmm.
it actually happened Thursday of last week is kind of when it hit the
Oh,
streets.
mm,
But
mm.
yeah, let me drop this in. So Microsoft announced last week that it lost like 17 days worth of logs for certain customers. And these logs included things out of Sentinel, which is their SIM product, Defender for Cloud, Audit Trails, Entra, which is their identity management, and just announced that, hey, these we did a service change. things got broken. We're very sorry. And it really, really kind of creates this, this additional concern now, because how do you know when your logging stops? You almost need logging to look at logging. And we talked about
Yeah.
this amongst some folks from Black Hills earlier in the week, and it was just the fact that yes, log services sometimes stop working. It may only be on an individual server or something like that. It's not, multi-tenant wide usually, but uh, just knowing, how big of a gap in that could create. Are the logs forever lost? And, what do you even do there? So it was an interesting thing. And I think the real big takeaway for me and what I've kind of been thinking is all of our logging sources, all of our tooling that does logs, we probably need to make sure that those are somehow instrumented at the very least to say, hey, so and so's server is no longer logging, and and then creating some scheduled things where maybe they restart and things like that. So it's it's a tough day when you have to go to tell somebody that you've lost almost 3 weeks worth of logs for some of your most critical cloud services.
Mm. It's brutal when that happens. I know, and I've seen that that process happen. One of my certifications is certified information systems auditor, and logging of logging was quite a large element of what was going on in getting tested over being an information
Mhm.
systems auditor. Is how do you know when logging stops? The question you just asked is exactly the correct one. How do you know when logging stops? And the answer is logging should be logged. And then, I mean, we could go down the infinite variety of
Yeah,
mirrors, the hall of mirrors right here, like two back to back, and you say Bloody Mary 3 times, and all of a sudden your logging begins again. It's pretty great. Um, are we going to get a really good vulnerability? Somebody did this weird Fortinet vulnerability. It was FortiGate, right? The vuln that came out this last week. Somebody stuck
oh
the
yeah,
Fortinet logo over a red velvet cake, and I was like, I'm not getting the joke here on this one. You should throw up that link if you'll see what I'm talking about. It's the Fortinet logo with like this red velvet cake in it, and it's the weirdest thing. And I keep trying to figure out how you get to that from the vulnerabilities, but I'm hoping for some nice scary ones around Halloween because it'll be
yeah,
entertaining.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's nuts. But I think there's really an element there where auditing is a thing that happens because we have to ask ourselves the question, what happens when nothing happens? How do we know if nothing is happening? And one of the hardest questions to answer is a question I've been asked before when I was an executive at a couple of companies. Get asked by my boss, how sure are we that there's no one who's currently in our systems that shouldn't be? And
Yeah,
I was like, that's a hard question to answer, right? Like, what is your, and it's because it wasn't just a confidence level, it was is there a gate that gets tripped? Is there a firewall that gets, pinged? What is happening here when somebody breaks into your system? And so determining that nothing is happening with any confidence is extremely difficult. You can say for sure when something is happening, but this is the same reason that theories can't be proven, they can only be disproven in science, right?
right.
You can't prove that a theory is true. You can only disprove it because a theory is intended to be our best conception of the situation until something comes along to replace it through the scientific method of disproving a theory. And then, you fix it and you keep going with slightly improving science over time, right? That's what's happening in information security as well too. We do a thing until it turns out that wasn't the best thing to do, and there's a fix for it, and then we move to the next best practice. So I don't
Absolutely.
know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go
Yeah, I
for it.
keep finding the picture of the red velvet cake, cut into
See,
the firewall, but I'm,
throw it up.
yeah, I'm trying to find one that like kind of no. Also just, I mean, no offense to them, but Fortinet uh Fortinet vulnerability is a search string that definitely um
Oh, well, hang on.
oh
I'll
goodness.
I'll I'll throw it up here. I think I've got one
Yeah.
here. So here's the vuln, and
Ah,
this is so
excellent.
memorable because I was looking at it, and it's a FortiGate like with red velvet. And what is the name anybody has called this before? I'm so obsessed with like what this like CVE is gonna get called and like what we're gonna like popularly call it. And
Right.
I keep looking for like a red teaming analogy and a talk in here, and I can't figure out what it would be. We come up with the wackiest shit in this
It's
field.
never it's not a real vulnerability until it's got a catchy name, right? You know,
Oh,
something that can
ugh.
then go out in an email from sales and saying, "Hey, we can
Mhm,
detect, red velvet in your
mhm.
organization. Click here for
That's
our white paper on it," and
oh,
so on and so forth.
man, you're talking about pizza rolls earlier. We got red velvet cake here. All I am right now is hungry. Okay. And at Costco right now, if you people don't know this, you need to go to Costco right now because Nordic Ware little Christmas tree bunt pans are on sale for $23. Like I'm here to just I'm doing a public service right now because those are like $60 pans normally. You go get them $23 and you make a chocolate bundt cake in this thing and you put like a little bit of powdered sugar over the top of it and you are like you turn into Ina Garten like immediately. Right? It's amazing. So I
Love
cannot
it.
wait to do that. Now all I am is hungry. There's red velvet cake, there's pizza rolls. So, and the last time we ordered pizzas, me and Deviant ordering pizza, and it was about, I don't know, it might have been a week ago. And we don't normally do pizza, but it was a day and we had like both of us were having incident response and calls and this, that, and the other thing. And it was a crazy, stressful day. We get to the end of the day and I'm staring at the kitchen. He's staring at the kitchen. And I was like, God, I gotta figure out like where did I leave the olive oil again? I gotta make the salad. And like, what am did I even turn the oven on earlier? And did we defrost the fish? And he turns to me and goes, baby, let's just order a pizza. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, let's order a pizza. So we
That's
ordered.
that's the mark of a healthy relationship when you both can mutually kind of give up on adulting
Yeah,
and just say, you know what would help tonight is pizza or
pizza.
just tacos or whatever,
Hmm.
something that's quick, easy, and you can both veg out. And the greatest thing about pizza is that if you just sit there with the box together, there's no dishes to clean up anything. You
Oh
just
yeah.
throw the box away like it never happened. So
Oh, it was so
absolutely.
great. And then all we had to do at this point, and I know this is a conversation and it's going to be controversial, but I need you guys to understand right now that I, in fact, ordered 3x pineapple on my half of the pizza. Do you have a problem with that? Want to come talk about it? 3x pineapple on my side of the pizza with the spam and the prosciutto add-on, right? And banana
Oh,
peppers. That's right. That's what's up.
there you
Hmm.
go.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. I anytime I'm in the mood for pineapple on pizza, I need to find a place that will actually sell or has like a spicier red sauce because then
Hmm.
then it's kind of that perfect combination. So nope, I feel it. I can respect the pineapple. I think it's just other people it's the cool kid thing to hate on apparently.
I mean, it's at the same time like this it's a thing that brings people joy, right? Like let's all calm down and instead of being somebody who's not happy about other people having fun, let's all
Mhm.
just, be somebody that is filled with joy. And I think that's just the element of being part of InfoSec that matters. And I'm thinking about that guy this morning who was just real burnt out and it was hard. And I want to see and I want to say that a little extra joy doesn't hurt in your life, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Should we talk about how CISA is trying to bring some joy with their
Yes,
new security requirements?
I
How'd you
do.
like
And
that
but
for a lead in?
I do like bring some joy. And honestly, I love this so much. It's so important. Sis is doing a great job on this one. Respectfully, a lot better than the CPGs, which didn't do a lot, I think, to clarify. This clarifies. This fixes some stuff. I love that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. What's up with it?
So, with this, it's kind of linked to the implementation of a previous executive order signed by President Biden, and just to address severe data security liabilities. And what I love about it is they have a kind of bulleted list of security requirements, and they're all very easy for us to understand. There's no well, what do you mean here? What do you mean there? Things like remediate known exploited vulnerabilities within 14 days, remediate your critical stuff within 15, high severity within 30. enforcing MFA, which, a lot of this stuff is table stakes, but now CISA is actually getting behind it and saying these are the things to do. I love that they, are pushing for the collection of log events, especially access related events. So they're looking for public input now. You can go out there and drop some comments, things like that. But I think they have a really good start here of just some steps that I think a lot of us have been banging on the tables for. The one thing it is at very top. Maintain and update an asset inventory monthly. I love you, CISA. That,
Oh,
you know,
yeah, absolutely. Asset inventory, or hear me out, continuously update your asset inventory with a reasonably decent tool with a monthly audit of whether or not that tool actually caught everything or not. I
Yeah.
mean, that's next level and so much easier.
Yeah, it's huge. We talked about burnout earlier, and I would say one of my biggest borderline burnout days was having to drive 2.5 hours each way to find a laptop that was in a conference room that was infected and was trying to move laterally among the rest of the network. We kept getting alerts that machines were being attacked, and we couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And the customer told us, well, we've looked around, we found all the computers, and like there's still one out there. And yep, lo and behold, it was under a jacket or something and just running and trying to serve malware. And I pulled the plug and drove 2.5 hours home, hating life the whole way.
Oh my God. Yeah. And that's always the story, right? Is I was actually on a couple of calls recently about, how do you do attestation for large networks, and exactly that question, right? Like, how do we know we got all the computers? How do we know what we're not seeing? I feel like that's so much of the question in information security is, what are we not seeing about the perspective that we're looking at? And the answer is, like, once you get to like 96, 97, 98% coverage of what you've got going on, the rest of it just genuinely is edge cases. You're going to have that guy drive 2.5 hours and unplug a computer that was under a jacket, and you've gotten everything else and you've done your best. But sometimes it just takes a different perspective, and it is a human being solving those edge cases. There's no tool that covers everything because computers can't imagine what's not there. They can't do it. That's a thing about kind of humanity and the way that we handle heuristics. We could imagine that something's not there, but when we ask a computer to imagine what's not there, you get hallucinations in Chat GPT for source citations. It doesn't do anybody any good.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that asset management, it's because it's a problem for both big companies, little companies. I think the difference is that big companies are chasing down, thousands upon thousands of endpoints, but they have controls that hopefully prevent somebody from adding more crap to the network, and not be discovered. Whereas smaller businesses, they often don't have the capability of even knowing if somebody's added something. I have found, extra Linksys networks at companies simply because someone couldn't reach the Wi-Fi on the other end of the factory floor and chose to bring home a crusty old WRT and plug it into the network. And it's like, great. The attacker now has something they can talk about a foothold. The thing was probably compromised already. So the shadow IT stuff is really, really big, just in different ways for each of them.
Strongly agree. I really do. I mean, as we're starting to wrap up here a little bit at the end of our fun time together for this week's kind of news and what's going to impact people, I'm sitting here thinking about, as soon as you posted the CISA story, I was looking at it and going, man, we already answer most of these questions, if not all of these questions in Red Queen, which is kind of great. That means we can create the framework for it really easily. But one of the things I definitely want to do here is talk with you folks, especially for those who haven't had a chance before to look at some of the stuff that we're doing. I'm going to, let's see if I can add this, rtdn.us/white paper. If you're an MSP or an MSSP that hasn't had a chance yet to take a look at some of the stuff that we do, and you're trying to figure out why this is going to work and why we're busy, gabbing away about news and complexity and issues, I want to give you guys an opportunity really to take a look at some of the stuff that we're doing. This is really focused on MSPs, MSSPs, VCSOs, IT service providers. This is those of you that are that are actually kind of in the mix here, and how we can start keeping some of these small businesses more safe. It's hard to do, right? And I feel like this is going to give you a sense that we understand the pressure that you're under, and that we are the folks that are really kind of creating some of these solutions in a way that make it easy to manage and maintain. Like, you can send this list out from CISA as a newsletter to your clients, but they're not going to pay attention to it. If it's baked in behind the scenes and you can tell them in advance, here's how well you're not doing yet, or how well you have been doing on these questions, I think it makes a really big difference to them. So take a
Agreed.
look. Yeah, and it's a real joy and a pleasure to get a chance to speak with you folks. James, anything to add this week other than the
Uh,
craziness?
it's the craziness of everything for us. It's also having, I have 3 kids that are in school, and it's parent teacher conference week. So I feel like air traffic control, where I'm like, okay, can I be here and then get to the other school in time? Or I've probably changed one of the conferences like 3 times already, just to
Okay.
try to line things up. But no, coming up for Halloween, hopefully, now that we're 24 days into Cybersecurity Awareness Month, hopefully people are aware. If
Yep.
you're not aware yet, we probably should talk. And no, I just wish everybody have a great rest of their week, and always excited to come back and talk security
Mhm.
compliance with my dear friend Tara.
James, it is as always a joy. I'm going to see you folks this next week talking about the news and things that impact MSPs, MSSPs, small businesses, compliance, and the nitty gritty about how we end up keeping people safe, actually figuring out how to unblock those roadblocks to revenue. And yeah, just the ecosystem we're living in right now. It is an interesting time, my friend, and I'm looking forward to hopefully getting a chance to get some holiday cheer in me before I see too many new regulations coming out. Oh, Lord, here we go. All right, James. Have a wonderful week, folks. Have a fabulous, fabulous week. We look forward to seeing you again. We're always here, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern every week. We'll see you folks soon. Bye just for now.